Have you ever seen a garage that has been closed for a long time and wondered what it holds inside? Well, it hadn't been opened for quite a few years, and look at the gem they were hiding here, a 1988 Toyota Supra Turbo MK that has been abandoned for 12 years. A few months ago, a colleague told me that a former co-worker of his had a Supra parked in the garage for quite a few years. And I believe that for those of us who love cars, hearing the word Supra when it's parked and for sale brings a rush of emotions all at once. The thing is, whether it's the Supra of any model, it's an incredible car. This one in particular is a MK from 1988, and when I saw it, in the condition it was in, when I saw the interior and the things that needed to be done, I said this car has to be for me. The car has 150,000 kilometers and the interior only had dirt and some wear on the gear knob and steering wheel. It seemed like no one had ever sat on the rear seats. It was surprising that at 35 years old, the car's interior was in such good condition. But the best part of this Supra is the engine, as it is the turbo version, and although it was dirty, it also looked perfect. According to the owner, the car had been sitting for about 12 years, so it couldn't be started, and since it had been parked there without moving in the garage, it was missing air in the tire. But when I go shopping for this kind of thing, I like to bring tools with me, so I took the portable compressor to inflate the tire and be able to move it. With the tire inflated, we can now move the car to get it out of the garage. I was inside steering, so I didn't push anything, but the Supra is a pretty large and heavy car, and it's quite difficult to move it like this while stationary, but there was no other option. Surely when they parked the car like this, it would have started. Loading it onto the tow truck was quite easy, as it was on a slope, and the car could be aligned well with the tow truck without the need for pushing. Once the car is loaded and secured, we can take it home to start working on it and make it like new, or at least try to. Before I started working on the aesthetics, as is logical, I wanted to start it up, so I began by checking the overall condition of the engine. I noticed that the spark plugs needed to be changed, and when I checked the fluids, I saw that it was low on antifreeze. When I replenished it, I noticed it was leaking from a small fitting that the intake has for cooling. I managed to repair this, but aside from that, we have a broken fuel pump. So while I wait for the parts to arrive, we will first focus on the aesthetics. Overall, the body looks good. It doesn't have any serious dents. The only issue is that the paint looks somewhat faded. But to see it better, the first thing we are going to do is remove this dust from being locked away. We started by removing the license plates and then began cleaning the bodywork using only pressure water to remove all the superficial dirt on the car. Now that we have removed all the superficial dirt, we do a pre-wash on the wheels by applying a 50% degreaser of my brand. We let it sit for a few minutes and use a brush to help remove all the old brake dust that the wheels have. Now we are going to clean the bodywork a bit more thoroughly, and for that we will use the new V-Foam Lance model from MJJC. Before using it on the car, a small test to adjust the fan and the amount, although for me the adjustment is at maximum so that it produces plenty of foam. As you can see, spraying the car with foam takes a moment, and the density is quite good for the small amount of shampoo that is put in the tank. Once we apply the shampoo to the bodywork, we let it sit for a few minutes so that the foam adheres well to the dirt, and then we use high pressure water to remove all the remaining grime. Now that the car is clean, the paint looks perfect and we don't have to do anything to the exterior. But no, I wish it looked that shiny. Now, in 2001, the paint looks perfect and the car is super shiny. But when we follow it, we will see the sad reality of what it is like to have a faded red car. The layer of clean water on the car right now acts as a varnish and makes the red paint shine. But when we remove it, we see that the paint is quite burned. Solutions for this? Well, in my opinion, painting the entire car would be best, because it has quite a bit of damage. But right now I can't take on a job like that. The paint has quite a few chips. There are some small dents. The driver's door has been repainted, and the color is slightly different from the rest of the body. The trunk lid has a dent that looks quite bad, and the edges of the doors are scuffed to hide the dings and scratches from the doors. I bought some paint in the original color code of the car, so we are going to prepare a bit of this single layer paint, so it doesn't need a clear coat. This paint is catalyzed, so we need to add a bit of catalyst for it to dry. To apply the paint on the spots, we are going to use a tool that I don't even know the name of. This device has a small reservoir where we will put paint, and through a very small tube it has, we will let the paint drop in small bursts. You might be wondering, why don't I paint the car? But as I said, I don't have the time, and I really don't like the idea of painting without taking it apart, just giving it a quick coat. Since I'm about to paint, I like to take things apart, remove door trims, and anything else I can disassemble to paint as well as possible. Since we are going to polish the car and the spoiler will get in the way, we are going to remove it. Additionally, we will also see what we can do about the dent it has in the trunk. To remove the spoiler, since it has 3 pieces, the ones on the sides of the body are secured with 2 screws, and then there are 2 clips pressed in place, while the center part has 2 screws at the ends. To remove the internal screws, we need to take off the plastic inside the hatch, and then we will have access to more screws that hold the spoiler in that area. Under the spoiler there were all these parts covered in mud, so we took the opportunity to clean them as well. Now comes the mystery of what to do with the dent in the trunk, as it is in a rather complicated spot to remove it with just a few taps from the back. So I got a little carried away here, and what I decided to do was to properly pull out this dent, apply the aluminum putty, and paint it. Now you might be thinking, you don't want to paint the car but you're going to paint the trunk. Well no, I'm not going to paint the entire trunk. We're only going to paint the section that we're going to clean up after removing this part of the sheet metal. With the dent puller, I made a small hole in the sheet metal, so we need to fill this with welding before applying the aluminum putty. Once we have removed the dent, we lightly sand the entire area with a sanding sponge to prepare it for the application of the putty. The putty I am applying is aluminum putty, which has better adhesion on bare metal. Since we only want to repair the area of the dent, we need to try to stay as much as possible within that area while sanding, so as not to make the patch too large. Once we have sanded the aluminum putty, we cover the car leaving the patch exposed and apply spray primer. When the primer is completely dry, we use a sponge to sand the entire patch well to level it. And then we cover the car again and start painting with the spray gun in red. We need to paint only the patched area without getting too close to the tape cut, because if we do, we will create a small ridge that we will then have to sand down, and it will be more difficult to level. No matter how much the paint is the original code, this patch will be noticeable, but at least there is no dent in the trunk and the patch is less conspicuous. We will have to let it dry for at least 24 hours before sanding and polishing. So we start polishing from the front and leave this part for last. The car had some small dents in various parts of the bodywork, so to remove or disguise them as much as possible, we are going to use a dent puller kit that I bought a few months ago, the kind that works with a hot glue gun. These kits don't perform any miracles, but if you dedicate time to them, they can save many dents and dings without having to paint the bodywork. To remove small dents like this one, we need to take the piece that we are going to glue that is the size of the dent, in this case the smallest one available, since it is a very tiny dent. With this tool, hook the piece and pull the dent outward without overdoing it, as we could stretch the metal and then instead of a dent we would have a bulge. To clean the silicone we use a bit of alcohol, 1 cloth, and as you can see, the dent has been quite well concealed, and we do the same process with the rest of the dents on the bodywork. Now we can start polishing. This paint is somewhat thin since it has been polished very abrasively at some point, and we cannot overdo it, so we will only give it a light polish. The car has some marks from having been polished with a disc machine or something similar, and in some areas the paint has burned, so we can't take any risks, and will only restore a bit of the shine without overdoing it. Before polishing, we need to use a clay bar with a little water and soap to decontaminate the bodywork. The clay bar is like a putty that, when passed over the paint, removes the contamination that is stuck to it, thus preventing it from sticking to the polishing pad and scratching the surface while we are polishing. To start polishing, we put a little polish on the sponge and without turning on the polisher, we spread the polish on a small area of the bodywork. Then, at the minimum speed, we start polishing until the polish is fully spread, and then we will increase the speed by 20% to 25% of the polisher. If we go too fast, we can overheat the area we are polishing and burn the paint, so it's much better to do it slowly. Once we have polished the entire patch thoroughly and meticulously with a clean cloth, we remove the worn polish. And as you can see now, it shows quite a bit more than before. Although it is not yet at 100% perfect finish due to some unavoidable factors during our process of restoration work on this particular piece of paintwork being done right now. For the areas where we cannot use the polisher because it is too large, we can do it by hand or with a small polisher. Now that we have polished the entire front section with cutting polish, we are going to polish everything again with medium fine polish to enhance the shine even more. For this polishing, we can make larger patches as it stretches a bit more than the other, allowing us to work a little faster. As you can see, this already looks like something else, and although the paint has its imperfections, since it doesn't look faded, it looks much better. Now we will continue with the roof and the sides and follow the same process. We use cutting polish to remove the most worn areas and then apply the fine polish to enhance the shine. On the right side, beneath the fender, there was a detached part and rust was visible inside. This is due to a design flaw, as mud accumulates inside, creating a moisture trap for the metal, and the plastic support, which was metallic, had corroded. To solve this is a bit complicated because it was very pitted and had broken. So the quickest solution I saw was to clean up the rust a bit and use double-sided tape to stick it to the sill so that it wouldn't remain separated. Now that we have polished both sides, we move on to the trunk. In the trunk area, we need to level the patch. But before we start leveling, we are going to remove the rear windshield wiper as it will hinder us from polishing. Another thing I didn't show before is that one of the taillights had a dent and was broken, and since we have to change it and polish the entire surrounding area, we are going to remove both taillights. To level the patch, we spray a little water with soap and use a sanding block with 2000 grit wet sandpaper to sand the entire area until there are no transitions between the two paints. We have to sand this very carefully because if we oversand the paint on the car, we will have to repaint to fix it. Once we have sanded the patch, we continue polishing just as we did with the rest, and on the patch area, we give a few more passes of polish to remove the sanding. Once the tailgate is polished, the patch shows quite a noticeable color change. But well, I expected this to happen before doing the work, since reds are very tricky to match exactly, and it stands out a lot when repainted. But the important thing is that the dent is gone. Now that the rear has been polished, we are going to renew the taillights a bit. One of the taillights was broken, but I was lucky to find a second-hand one for $50, which seemed super rare to me given the scarcity of parts for these cars. Taking advantage of the fact that the taillights are disassembled, we thoroughly cleaned the entire interior with a little water and soap. And we also polished them to restore their shine, making them look new. Before installing the spoiler on the car, we polished it, as it will be easier to polish the internal parts. Here it is disassembled. And then I put it on the car. We have already completed the entire exterior. We still need to give it a final polish, but we will leave that for when we finish the interior. Fortunately, there is almost nothing broken in the interior, so the only thing we need to do is cleaning, and the first thing we are going to do is remove the front seats. Removing these seats is super easy. All we have to do is take off some small plastic covers that hide the screws and remove 4 screws that each seat has. We also removed the rear seat bottoms. We will leave the backs to clean them while they are mounted, and we also took out all the trash that was in the glove compartment of the car. And we would have the interior cleared to start with the cleaning. But before we begin with the interior, let's clean the seats first. The seats do not have any extreme dirt, but it is noticeable that the fabric, instead of being grey, is a little brown. So we are going to give them a pass with the upholstery cleaner and our multi-purpose degreaser. The first thing we are going to do is apply degreaser all over the seats completely and let it sit for a few minutes to effectively loosen the dirt. Once we have let those minutes pass, we will start scrubbing the entire seat well with the drill and brush to remove all the dirt. And then with the upholstery cleaner, we will begin to vacuum all the grime we have removed from the seat. And with the injection extraction system, we will start rinsing the entire fabric. The seats were noticeably quite dirty, but now seeing a clean seat next to the other makes a big difference. On the driver's seat, a trim that runs along the seams from getting in and out has cracked, and the truth is that changing this part is super complicated, not to mention that it would be necessary to find a fabric that is exactly the same as the original to replace that piece. So what I do here is just cut it directly, trim a little bit of the torn fabric, and that's it. I removed the stains from the front seats quite easily and didn't pay attention to what they could be. I thought it was dust from having the car locked up for a long time, from using it and never having cleaned it. But in the back, something happened to me that didn't happen in the front, and that is that I tried to clean it exactly the same with the upholstery cleaner, but the yellow stains kept coming back. So after thinking it over a lot and trying to figure out what was wrong with the car, the stain we had was tobacco smoke. A lot of tobacco smoke has been smoked in the car, and I had no way to clean it with the upholstery cleaner, so after giving it quite a bit of time trying to clear it up, I finally got angry and grabbed the pressure washer and used high pressure water on it, and with that, the yellow stains really came off. And you may wonder why I was able to clean the front well. But it was so difficult in the back. My theory is that while smoking in the car with the window open, most of the tobacco smoke goes to the back. Then in the front part, the one who is driving, the seat is the driver's seat above and is not as exposed. And just like if someone is sitting in the front passenger seat, it is more complicated for someone to be seated in the rear seats, which are more exposed. Now that all the seats are clean and spotless, we move on to the interior of the vehicle. The first thing we are going to do is to thoroughly vacuum the carpet. It is not very dirty, but it does have some dirt and dust particles. While we are at it, we will give it a comprehensive and thorough cleaning to remove any stubborn stains along with all the dirt. Dust and surface dust it had accumulated over time. Now we are going to go a little deeper to remove the stains and dirt that may be trapped in the hair, and for this we will use the tornado tool with a bit of degreaser. In the compartment, what we are going to do is remove all the dirt trapped in the carpet and then use the vacuum cleaner to suck up everything we have disturbed. In order to clean the fabric of the door panels. Since this is not like the seats, which have a foam filling that absorbs dirt, here we can use the tornado tool. We give it a good wet pass to remove the dirt effectively, and then we turn off the tap and dry the panel. The backrest of the rear seat, since we didn't take it apart because it has a lot of screws, we had to clean it in place, and with the amount of tobacco smoke stuck to it, it honestly took me quite a while. I at least gave it about 5 or 6 passes with the upholstery cleaner, but in the end, it turned out well. The trunk carpet, since it doesn't have much dirt, can be cleaned while it's in place. We vacuum it to remove the dirt it has, and we use a brush to get rid of the stains. And underneath the carpet, the truth is that since the car is spotless, there is nothing there. We don't need to remove it at all. With all the fabrics in the interior clean, we are going to start cleaning the plastics, as they also have quite a bit of tobacco smoke stuck to them. To clean them, we apply a little 10% degreaser, and with the help of a brush, we thoroughly clean all the texture of the plastic, removing all the dirt. Then, with a clean and dry cloth, we wipe off the product, and as you can see, the difference is quite noticeable. The gear knob of the car, as it was with the upholstery destroyed, was removed, and later we will look for a solution for this. And we would have the entire interior free of dirt. So now we are going to find solutions to the two problems that the car has inside. One of them is the gear knob. This has leather upholstery that is completely destroyed, and honestly making a new one is quite complicated. I also don't know exactly how the top part goes because I haven't found a photo of it, so I thought about stripping it completely to see how it was. Well, it's made entirely of rubber, and to be honest, after cleaning it and putting it in the car, it doesn't look that bad, so for now, it's going to stay like this. Another thing that is missing from the interior of the car is the fabric of the handbrake. Since we don't have any reference to make a new one, what we are going to do is use a sheet of paper to create a small template to see how the fabric should be, and thus we can create a pattern for the new upholstery. Once we have the two pieces of fabric cut, we just need to sew them together, and to make the upholstery look nicer, we will add visible stitching on the top. Well, for being done by eye, it might be acceptable, although in my opinion it turned out a bit small. When I have a moment, since I already have this one as a reference, I will use a larger one and get it ready. Now that we have the complete interior, we are going to apply a silicone-free dashboard polish to restore all the colors to the plastics inside. We spread this out well with a sponge without overloading it so that it doesn't get too soaked, and we need to let it dry. Once it dries, we wipe it with a microfiber cloth and that's it. It becomes softer and leaves a more natural shine. Understood your status story. Yes, but I could feel his tense. Don't know the consequence, the volatility of life. My only confidence. While we wait for the polish to evaporate a bit, I had forgotten to clean something, and that is the seat belts of the car. If the seats had all that smoke stuck to them, just imagine that the seat belts are exactly the same. So we do as always, we put a container with clean water, apply a bit of degreaser, and forget that the seat belt is in there for at least 20 minutes or half an hour, so that the degreaser works well and removes all the dirt. Once we have let it take effect and the water has turned this color, we take it out, drain it well, and with a microfiber cloth, we finish drying it and remove any dirt that may be stuck to it. This way, the seat belts will look new. Since we have allowed the polish to evaporate a bit, we use a dry cloth to wipe all the plastics and remove the excess product, leaving a more natural and smoother finish to the touch. And so, if we have the interior 100% finished, we can reassemble all the seats in the car. Now we are going to give a final detail to the bodywork, which is that we will apply a wax using liquid carnauba wax. To apply the wax, we dampen the applicator slightly, put a bit of product on it and spread it over a small area of the bodywork. Then, with a clean and dry cloth, we polish the wax and remove the excess. And as a final touch, a bit of tire and rubber freshener will be applied to make the tires look new. Guys, I'm leaving you with an antenna after the final result of the Supra. I hope you enjoyed the video and don't forget to subscribe.
I know you told your friend you're not okay, and tell me what's wrong and why you never said you felt that way. And guess you're trying to stay strong and fake a smile until I look away. But I've known you too long, it hurts to watch your blue eyes fade to gray as you fade away, as you fade away.
Yeah, I'm about to fade away, cause every time I wake up I feel like it's Monday. Something's going wrong with all the chemicals up in my brain. All of a sudden I don't look at anything the same way. Gotta build up of my thoughts sitting in an ashtray. I'm sorry that I'm so inconvenient, okay. Just let me be me and I'll stay out of your way. I can see the way you look at me, I'm such a disgrace. I never really asked to be brought into this place. You wanna love me? Well then